Welcome back to Fresh Outlook. I'm Toschi. If you're just joining us, we've been talking about the alleged IRS targeting of conservative groups. Now we turn our attention to the secret gathering of AP phone records. This week, nearly 50 media organizations joined with the Associated Press in rebuking the Justice Department for using its police powers against the First Amendment rights of the news media. We take a closer look in our next story.
Executives at the Associated Press can barely contain their rage over what they consider the worst kind of violation of their rights as journalists.
On Friday, we got a notice from the Justice Department that they had seized the records of 20 of our telephone lines, work and personal lines, belonging to AP journalists and connecting to AP bureaus in several locations. They haven't told us what they're looking for, and nor have they explained why we got no prior notice, which our lawyers tell us is not only customary but required.
So why exactly did the Department of Justice get a subpoena authorizing the seizure of the AP phone records? What are they looking for? Government officials have previously said they've been trying to identify the source in an AP story last May about a foiled terrorist plot in Yemen. CIA officials have called a release of that information unauthorized and dangerous. The phone records seized fit the time frame of the AP stories about the Yemen plot. And today, Attorney General Holder went on the offensive, telling the press the seizure was justified.
This was a very serious leak, and a very, very serious leak. I've been a prosecutor since 1976, and I have to say that this is among, if not the most serious, it is within the top 2 or 3 most serious leaks that I've ever seen. It put the American people at risk, and that is not hyperbole. It put the American people at risk.
In Washington, AP employees would not talk on camera, telling us they cannot.
Comment, I'm sorry.
What do they tell you about speaking to the media about this?
We have to direct you to our corporate communication.
A lot of people around media-savvy Washington know about this breaking story already and have strong opinions supporting both the government and the rights of journalists.
Dee Dee Benkie, Scott Monje, and Jackie Guzda are sharing their time and expertise this week, and we thank you very much for joining us here at Fresh Outlook. All right, now the feds obtained home, office, and cell phone records of reporters and an editor at the news agency who were covering Congress. All of this is under President Obama's watch. I'm going to start with you, Scott. Your thoughts on this?
Well, about it being under President Obama's watch, which clearly it is, he has now a reputation for going aggressively after links. The law under which this is generally done dates back to 1917, and from that time until the beginning of the Obama administration, there was a total of about 3 convictions, and under Obama there have been 6. But a couple of those were actually started in the Bush administration, investigations that began in the earlier administration that came to trial then.
Absolutely.
And some of it has to do just with the technology. It's become easier to track down who's leaking things because of electronic communications and record keeping and things like that. And some of it is from pressure from Congress, and not just Republicans, Democrats and Republicans both demanding that these leaks be investigated. And the Republicans in particular, I think, because they think that he's doing it.
So who authorized the subpoenas?
The subpoenas were authorized by the Deputy Attorney General, because the Attorney General was one of the people in the administration who knew the secret that had been leaked. And as someone who knew the secret, he was not a subject of investigation. So people in the White House, I have to assume, also knew the leak and probably were subject to investigation as well. So when Obama says he hadn't heard about it, it's probably true. When Holder says he hadn't heard about it, that's probably true as well.
Well, let's talk about journalists. I'm one of them, of course, but journalists back in Washington, but all over the country, they're calling this a massive intrusion into the gathering of news. Dee Dee, your thoughts on that?
I agree. I think this is terrible. It's scary. And the good that can come out of this is to have a stricter federal shield law. Right now, it's not strict enough. It's different in different states, and it's also outdated because it doesn't address digital communication. So, in fact, in my home state of Indiana, news sources like Slate and a lot of the digital communication, they're not covered, it's not addressed. So that needs to be strengthened. So that's something good that can come out of this at least. But I think that that's probably going to happen. There'll be a new law.
I was just going to say some of the rules might change, just like we were talking about with the IRS. Jackie, your thoughts?
Yeah, I hope that Holder comes across and tells us in time why it was so important for him to go in and find out who this person who leaked was, because the ramifications of this action are just horrific. I mean,
What do you think talk about the ramifications?
Obama, the entire administration has the entire press now against them.
Well, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, you don't go after the AP.
Yeah, you do not go after the AP and all the little guys, us included, underneath.
So you think we're going to see something? I mean, certainly the story won't go away, as opposed to some other stories.
It's not, and I do hope that something like the SHIELD law gets passed. The problem with that is that they brought up the SHIELD law time and time again over the last 10 years.
It's so weak.
It's weak. Unfortunately, the Republicans kept saying, no, it's, threatening national security. We cannot have this law, but maybe things are changed now.
Well, let's talk about that. Now, Attorney General Eric Holder, he said this is the most serious leak he has seen since 1976. He even said this leak is something that could endanger the American people. Scott?
Well, it's hard to discuss because we still don't really know what it is. Now, we know
Fair
that
enough.
the AP assumes...
I'm quoting him, though.
No, that's all right. The AP assumes that it has to do with the story about Yemen. The Justice Department hasn't said that. That appears to be right. Now, the story that everybody talks about doesn't actually say very much, and it doesn't appear to say anything more than the administration was about to announce itself. David Ignatius at the Washington Post, who has a lot of sources, says that what they're really upset about is the revelation that the person who was supposed to wear this new improved underwear bomb was actually working for us. He was a Saudi agent. The Saudis were sharing the information with the British and us. The Saudis were just irate when this got out. But that wasn't in that story. That was in another story the next day in the LA Times, I think, and the New York Times. So there's probably more out there that we haven't heard about yet. Maybe the FBI ran into some information that suggested that those people got it from AP or something like that. But it's not the reporters who are being investigated, of course. It's the government people who leaked them, and they're trying to figure out who talked.
But it begs
to
the question,
reporters.
should the AP have been notified?
Well, again, we don't know what happened. I mean, the AP came out a week ago with very bold accusations about the Justice Department not following the rules at a time when they didn't know what the Justice Department had done. The rules, you don't actually need a warrant to do this. There was a Supreme Court decision in the 70s.
That's right, Burger Court.
Look, when you're talking about something as old as disco, I'm sorry, but something needs to be done. It's too old.
You have a point there.
Good point
In
there.
fact, what the rule says is that you need a warrant to listen in on somebody's conversation, but not to know who they called, because when they dial the phone, they're telling a third party who they're calling. They're telling the phone company, and that means you're not keeping it private anymore.
Right, as long as there's a third party.
The people who wrote that rule in the Supreme Court in the 70s probably learned to make phone calls at a time when you picked up the receiver and said, hello,
They're
I'm
probably
Lou,
dead
I
now,
want
the
to talk to
people who wrote
so-and-so.
it. They're probably not even around anymore.
Here's a question.
And so there are technical changes that have changed the situation
Absolutely.
that maybe should be addressed, perhaps.
But one of the other things is not just technical, but in the name of fighting terrorism, of course, the rules have changed as well. Is this fair? And what does this mean for members of the press going forward? Jackie?
We need our whistleblowers. I mean, look at Bradley Manning and the trouble that he's in now. The Obama administration is really going after him in WikiLeaks. That's a horrible thing. If you remember Daniel Ellsberg, when we had Watergate, he was a whistleblower. He put his life on the line for that. We need to protect these people.
Yeah, I'm in agreement. I think that this is very upsetting and disconcerting, and the Obama administration, here we are again, saying, yes, this is wrong, this is bad, it needs to be addressed. But we still don't know the origins, we still don't know what the situation is, but it is definitely not a good week for President Obama, because it is true, as we have discussed, for the press to get mad at you, whenever the press has actually been very kind to President Obama, this is not a good move. So we'll see what happens.
Well, thank you very much. We're going to go to our next break in just a minute, and when we come back, we're going to be talking about Benghazi. Don't go away.